centricity and design thinking, so on and so forth, right? So those 10 critical factors are a must and should. I would say if you don't do any one of them, you could call it as John's framework or Ashwinee's framework rather than Scaled Agile framework, right? So again, idea is not to be very, what do you say, theoretical, but rather, I mean, those are the practices that have been proven to kind of take you through a right way, right? So right discipline, right way. It's like just like Scrum says, okay, planning, you have a daily stand-up, you have review and retrospective. Again, it's a thought process of taking from the planning to the completion, really getting the value. So I would say those 10 critical success factors are something you can't really avoid. If you avoid any one of them, you get into a problem of let's not do it or let me do it once in a while kind of a scenario, right? So demos, why do you want to do demos? It's about integrating and moving forward and really knowing what's a reality, right? So it's not about I want to demo every 2 weeks. It's rather, it's about, does the stakeholders have a visibility into the progress? We want to really look at that.
Ramesh, you want to add anything on
that? Nothing much to add. He covered very well, Ashwinee. Again, it goes back to the whole thought process, guys. Why do you want to do something which is proven by at least no less than 400 plus large scale institutions and 39% of the world organizations successfully implemented something? Why do you want to not use something? It goes back to the question there, right? So again, on your question, John, do we need to use everything? Idea is yes, use everything to be successful, but are you in a position to use everything from day one? Now that's where the question, the $1 million question comes into play. If you have Ramesh and Ashwinee with you, yeah, they'll make it happen. But if not, oh boy, okay, well, we'll figure it out. That's the way you need to do it.
And one of the reasons I asked this question, many of you who know me know I've been in Singapore about 8 years doing this, right? And a lot of times companies in the States where you are, Ramesh, they'll implement, soup to nuts, as we say in the States, they implement all, right? But then you come in Asia and we're here, we're in Singapore, we're in Thailand, we're in Philippines, whatever. And people go, you know what? We don't really want to use everything because, we're just getting started. We just, we're not sure about certain parts of it. And I've come across that, right? So you'll see that, companies like, well, and obviously I think you talked about Essential Safe, Ashwinee. Do you want to elaborate on that, or you can share your screen, or what is Essential Safe?
I think you have to allow me to share.
I have now allowed you to share.
Yeah. Okay. So I have it. I always have it. Again, most of you are SPCs here. I don't have to again introduce you to safe big picture. If I go to the essential part, the basic minimum construct that Scaled Agile has is team of teams. When you're talking about teams, mostly you will talk about Scrum or Kanban. When you talk about Scaled Agile, the minimum construct you have will be a train. Train is a team of teams. I would look at that way. So when I'm thinking about a team of teams, what are those principles and practices that we need to adhere to? This is where Essential Safe comes in. It's all based on the lean, agile, and the safe principles. This is why you have the bottom palette, which has the lean, agile leadership as a foundation, right? So you take it from there. Essential is mostly widely used one in terms of piloting a program. Again, we used to call it as a program level earlier. Now we don't specifically call it as a program team level and a program level. Rather, we call it as an essential level, right? Most organizations find it useful to start here. So this is the bare minimum that you would start with, Essential Safe. And then, like Ramesh said, you will figure it out, right? You will figure it out. You need financial governance, you go to portfolio level. If you are building large solutions, utilizing multiple trains running in parallel, then you go to large solutions. So I would look at it that way. So Essential Safe is the bare minimum that you would need to be successful in the safe implementation. In fact, the implementation roadmap also talks about launching one train at a time, and then over a period of time, you might be able to launch multiple trains in a large organization.
Right. Let me go to the group and see if there's other questions. I don't want to do all the questions. So other questions, anything that you want to ask is fair game about a safe implementation, agile transformation, business agility, you name it. Any questions? Like, is somebody raising their hand down there? I see a hand raised. Who's it?
There's a question.
Yeah, Saul, yeah.
Saul, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what is the adoption of Safe Life in Singapore among big organizations?
I will let Ramesh and Ashwinee start, and I will add in. Anybody else who wants to jump in can add too, but go ahead. Guys, do you want to start?
So Singapore, you're asking for a hello, Saul. Good morning, by the way. Good afternoon for you.
Good
I can speak for United States and the West. It's almost close to 62% of the market. But recently in the SAFE Summit, I heard in the world market, we are at about 39% scaled agile, you know.
I mean, of the agile transformation, agile enterprise agile?
Yes. And when it comes to Middle East, we are at 76%. India is growing pretty fast. I do not have the exact number, but I will put it anywhere from 55 to 60% approximately, give or take. Yeah. Now, Singapore, I would defer to John and Raymond. That is his first exact question for Richmond. Sorry, not Raymond, who just joined Scaled Agile 2 weeks ago, right? So I would put it back on them. But Ashwinee, do you know about Singapore?
I mean, if you think about Southeast Asia specifically, I mean, it could be anywhere between like around 20% is what I would say. It's a growing market. Singapore should be a little further than that, because I have been training few companies in Singapore from the last 4 years. I mean, I have trained few people, few participants from Singapore, some of the large organizations, even oil and natural gas was some area that I have seen growing there. Like, it was 4 years back. So it should be even better now today, but I may not have an exact percentage number, but it should be somewhere close to 30 to 40% is what I'm kind of thinking.
So just to add to that, my experience has also been, I've been associated with SAFE for quite a while now. And initially, there wasn't enough awareness in Singapore, but now when I speak to clients, there's more and more requests for SAFE. They're asking more. They are very keen. It seems like that the trust in SAFE framework has been built over the years because of the case studies throughout the world and success stories SAFE has demonstrated throughout the world. And that's Singapore. I currently am in Europe, and Europe is really, like Ramesh said, in US quite a lot, in Middle East it's about 70%, in Europe it's also largely SAFE-based now.
Yeah.
So I'll add on, sorry, was somebody else going to comment? Go ahead. I'm not sure, Richard, which one were you going to say something?
Yeah, I believe with Ashwinee, it's around 30 to 40% within Singapore. Yeah? And it's growing actually as per Nidhi. So thanks so much, Nidhi.
Okay, I'll give the, go ahead. The historic perspective and currently in Singapore, most of the implementations are usually part of a large multinational, right? So I don't know which ones are on the record. There are major banks and others that have been doing Scaled Agile, and usually part of their implementation gets done here in Singapore, right? And then also in the region. So usually what you will see is that the Scaled Agile transformations that I've seen don't often start with the Singapore location. They start with a location in the US or Europe, but then they're also implementing with their teams based in Singapore, Southeast Asia as well. So usually we see that quite a lot, and we see a lot of implementations that are operating that way. Implementations, and especially post-COVID, that have started in Singapore specifically, I wouldn't say that I see that as much, and I'm happy to have anybody else comment, but that's over many years in this market. Usually multinationals who are operating in Singapore and the region are the ones that are doing the Scaled Agile implementations.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, no problem. To answer your question, do you have any more you want to add on that question?
Nothing else for now. Thank you.
Okay, so welcome to, I think, Vijay Kumar, a couple others who just joined. And other questions from the group, or you can raise your hand or put them in the chat. Okay, we got a hand up here, and that is Devin. Go ahead, Devin.
So hi, everyone. Aside from being a Scrum Master, I'm actually a member of my company's LACE team. And one of the things that we're actually currently exploring is how to conduct those business agility assessments to measure those 7 competencies. Right now, it's been 1 year since our major reorg, because we basically we went to a major transformation last year wherein we started implementing a dual operating model wherein it's clearly separated when it comes to people management, and then we are assigned to what my company calls digital platforms. So I guess my question, I guess for those who are with us, especially to the SPCs one, to those who had SPCs, in your experience, how do you start implementing those types of assessments, and how frequent do you measure them?
So is it only for SPCs or?
Oh,
I think you guys can also answer.
Yeah, I get excited. Sorry. So, Devin, question for you. You mentioned that you started your transformation about a year ago, correct? Did I hear it okay?
Correct.
And did you do a baseline of where you were when you started the whole transformation?
In terms of having a baseline, I think no. In terms of measurement, we focused on measuring the outcomes and flow first. So it's only within this quarter that we're trying to explore actually rolling out the competency assessments.
Perfect. In that case, I would go with famous James Bond 007 quote, better late than never. Okay. So the way to do it is, at least this week, run the business agility assessment, which if you are an SPC or even that, it is available right there for free. Yep. From the Scaled Agile website. Download it and run it, right? That will give you, as of the day you ran the assessment, that will give you the current context where you are. Look at it, gather the actual gaps you see from the assessment result sets, as well as what are the fixes. The fixes are considered as grows, GROW, grows. That's part of the Scaled Agile website as well. Look at it and come up with the backlog. Based on the backlog, ideally, I have seen you need maybe at least 6 weeks to 12 weeks, depending on the size of the organization and how much you are missing in action, right? From the ideal line. Look at it and plan it that way. Do not go with a ideation of every month I have to run an assessment. That should not be the intent. The intent should be, we ran the assessment, we found some gaps. How long does it take? I use the analogy of exercising. If I want to lose weight, I cannot just, without even doing anything, say immediately I need to change my food, I need to run, I need to exercise. What if I have a hip problem? What if I have a some protein problem? I do not know. First, do the assessment. Understand what the gap is. Based on that, if it is reduction of fat, okay, do this XYZ jogging. If it is a reduction of cholesterol, do the diet changes, etc., etc. Look at it that way, Devin. I would always recommend that approach. Yeah. And once you go through that in 1-2 cycles, you will fall into your cadence. The system will tell you what is the best approach.
Yeah.
Make sense?
For me, maybe to start with every PI, when I have the IP iteration, I mean, that is the time for me to maybe run the assessment again and see. Later, maybe you adjust it to once in 6 months when you are good and stuff, right? So at least do it one PI. Don't do it too often. It kind of becomes a routine and not really a valuable exercise, right? Yeah, I think Priyanka had a question which is actually connecting to how do we tell leadership.
Yeah, you want to take that one in the chat there?
Yeah. How do we say that the agile transformation isn't done yet, right? So again, business agility assessment would be a good start to really look at what are the areas, because mostly the problem with our industry, I'll call it as a problem with our industry has been agile is linked with only IT part of the things, right? Everybody will work as is. We want the development teams to be faster. We want to get the builds faster, but we don't know what to do with that build, right? So we don't want to put the solution to the customer. Rather, we want to, again, have the builds on the staging environment or pre-production, which is not really going to the customer. Can we showcase that one, right? So it's not just about the team and technical agility alone. It's also about your lean portfolio management. How do we manage our initiatives? How do we make sure that the organizational agility is achieved? How do we make sure that the learning culture, continuous learning culture is achieved, right? So you could look at from that perspective. Agile transformation or a digital transformation is not just about IT. It's about everybody in the organization thinking in the same direction. Can I be 5 out of 5 everywhere? That's not the intention. But can I address the gaps that are currently there, which is very, very glaring? Definitely yes.
And I think to add on that, those assessments, like you said, Ashwinee, they're really connected because they can help you to show how well you're actually doing, right? A lot of times, Priyanka, as you ask, how do you show it? A lot of people go, oh, we're not done with the transformation. Yeah, sure, okay. But when you actually show, well, you know what? We're really weak in the team agility. We're really weak in this area. This we're doing pretty good. And you're actually able to show people that. And the assessments are, like they said, are on the website there. That's a great tool. I often use that when I've done a lot of different engagements with different clients and stuff. I'll, go and I'll use those assessments to show people, hey, this is how we're doing. And I usually do it as a self-assessment because if you come in and myself or Ashwinee or one of the other SPCs or Ramesh comes in and says, hey, this is how you're doing, they kind of get defensive. They're like, wait, why are you just, telling me that we're not, but if they do it, you want to walk them through and help them to evaluate for themselves. So self-evaluation, they take it much more seriously because they're like, we evaluated this. This is our own opinion. Now we're going to, they give it more weight. So I think those are a great tool and try to facilitate as an SPC or whatever your role is a self-assessment of it. Right.
Yeah. And one of the good thing about the assessment is even if you use it as a self-assessment from the leaders, right? So when you share that simple Excel sheet, maybe you are targeting only one core competency. There are around 40 questions which they have to go through. When they go through it, that kind of strikes them back. I'm not doing this one, or we are not doing this one, right? So that's where the importance of, more than the numbers for me, that statements are very, very powerful. Those statements are very, very powerful. Simple thing to look at it as all the team members are trained on Agile. As simple as that. So that kind of gives an indication that, yeah, we are trying to implement Agile without even telling people what Agile means for us, right? So that's a way to go about it. Maybe.
Ashwinee, something just triggered my memory one more time, just going back to Priyanka Agarwal's question. There's something deeper there, right? She's saying how to get leadership to understand that Agile transformation isn't done yet. So my question to the question, right? I'm not trying to escape that. Not giving a response is the leadership team part of the transformation or not? Or they are detached sitting on a high throne somewhere while the actual team of so-called transformation agent SPCs are working through? Perhaps there is an underlying problem there. If they are involved with what is happening on a day-to-day, the question doesn't even arise, Ms. Priyanka. Think of think of it from that side. Like why, they shouldn't ask the question, are we done yet? If they are part of the things going on a day-to-day, right?
Hey, Ramesh, thank you. That's a very, very pertinent question. And thanks, Ashwini and John as well for your input. I'm sorry, am I audible properly?
Yes.
Yep,
Yes,
yep,
definitely.
yep.
Okay, so yes, you're right. A lot of times, it's just like sometimes people are very trigger happy, right? So people want to set their goals and they want to say that they are done it, right? And of course, they have spent a lot of time, money, and energy in doing something, and then they want to show the results and say that yes, we are done. So I guess that ties back into the assessments, but at the same time to your question as well as to like, are they really involved, or are we like a lot of times it's also about making sure that we are showing the achievement because nobody wants to look bad.
Correct. Correct.
And maybe I will also call it off as not changing the goalpost, but rather adjusting the goals, right? So maybe you would have started with a North Star, but why can't we adjust? Maybe team and technical agility have become a little better. Maybe it's a time for you to concentrate on lean portfolio management because you want to align strategy and execution, right? So maybe think about in that direction. Sometimes
Yeah,
we'll
that's
have
a
to
very good
put
perspective.
ourselves, sometimes we'll have to put ourselves into the executive shoe also and think about, why are they asking what they are asking, right? So.
And you guys, I have on the screen
Makes sense.
here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. The screen, this is where you can find those assessments that everybody's talking about, the Measure and Grow in Scaled Agile site. So you can go here and you can look and download those. And there's different tools for the assessments.
Ram has a question, I guess.
Yes, taking that question, what Priyanka had asked to our next level, of course, in at least in my case, leadership is in alignment that they need to go for transformation, and there is absolute clarity on what they would like to achieve. The challenge that I'm going through, basically, I'd like to hear from you, or from your experience, or as a case study, how to handle the resistance at the middle management level. Some of the engineering managers, product managers, with whom I'm currently dealing with, working with is, yes, in our organization, that is how it has been. Basically, it's a cultural shift or a mindset change, which is very hard to break or bring that transformation there. So that's where one of the challenges that I'm currently going through. Just like to hear from you how you have been able to bring that behavioral or cultural transformation in the middle management. Senior management has agreed, or the leadership has completely, has been in alignment.
So Ram, the leadership is ready to pay the bill, right? And the teams are ready to work, but it's middle management that is having trouble. So let me again go back to the similar model of question to a question, right? At the beginning of the transformation, did we address the pain points of the middle management to begin with? Are we trying to run an exe file of safe.exe, double click it and it installs? Or are we actually working out what is the transformation is all about? Transformation is not just changing of processes, right? It's changing of the people mindset too. And people means managers too. We tend to conveniently ignore that. I have seen it again and again. You nailed it on the point, right? The teams are always excited because it makes their life easy. Management is excited because they're looking at the money factor. Like in the long run, it's really productive and better, right? Reduction of losses, delays, etc. But when it comes to middle management, did you connect with them through the human skill of, is this change actually helping you or going to hurt you? Did you clear their fears? Simple question. If you address that, 80% of your resistance will go away. The reason is very simple. I've seen it again and again, right? When you take this safe big picture, jump into the arena and say, hey, we are implementing safe, they're going to look at it. I'm a senior project manager and I'm going to look in the big picture. I don't see a senior project manager. Oh my God, my job is gone. My kids are coming to college. I need to feed 2 dogs and 4 cats. I need to pay the mortgage. I need to take care of my elderly parents. All this runs in the back of the mind. So what I do, I smile. Hey, Ram, good, definitely. but I will try my best not to. It's a Maslow's theory of needs. Survival comes first. But rather in the beginning, and again, better late than never, like how Sean Connery says in James Bond movies, did you talk to them and say, wait a minute, guys, you can be senior project manager, but SAFe is all about a dual operating system. Even though your title says senior project manager, you can be a release train engineer. You can be part of an LPM. You can be part of an APMO, something like that. If you show the path, I have a feeling that that'll sort out most of these issues, Ram.
I totally get. Thank you so much for this. Exactly what even I was thinking when I got into this engagement. But the challenge was it was all decided, and we were brought in the middle of the engagement rather than it already started. That's when the real challenge has been, because the transformation journey has already begun.
And again, for me, maybe for me, it's also about hitting that unknown part, right? Maybe you can showcase that there are a few things that are never changed. Like maybe, the senior project manager has been a senior project manager even through this transformation, and they had enough work, right? So they were working still 8 hours. Maybe, the way they used to operate to now would have been changing, right? So can you showcase that one? And even so many a times I've seen audience meetings where leaders really talk about those things specifically. That helps, right? You don't have to really call out. We are not throwing off anyone, but rather giving the team an assurance that what we are trying to do is value. It's not about implementing Scrum versus implementing SAFe, or again, sometimes I have a problem with saying implementing a framework, right? Rather, it's about actually what's the value that we want to get out of it, right? SAFe is a mean, it's not an end goal, right? So SAFe is not an end goal. Scrum is not an end goal. It's a mean by which we know that many organizations have reaped the benefit because we have available patterns which is readily can be picked up and implemented, right? That's why we are going for SAFe, right? So rather, it's not that I like SAFe, that's why I'm going there, but rather it's a proven framework, and there is a lot of case studies, there is a lot of practices and patterns which are available readily from the industry, which I can pick it up. Like if you look at the banks, there are 10 banks already having a case study, right? If you read all of them, your problem statement is already there, and the solution is also already there almost, right? So why don't we use that one? That's where we kind of struggle. We kind of talk about it, right? And maybe running them through the hierarchy and the network, the dual operating system, that might help, because luckily SAFe also has few articles which talks about what is the leadership in this new world, or what will management do in this new world, right? So there are some good guidelines. So that might help.
All right. Thank you.
And trust me, none of us have a reduced workload because of any framework. And we have more workload in terms of making the collaboration happens, making sure that the teams are happy, making sure that engagement is going on. So it's only increasing. So we might want to showcase that part.
Ashwinee, I'm going to add, when I'm on the leadership point, a lot of times, as something Ramesh had said earlier, middle management is always, concerned, because honestly, it is their survival, right? They're saying, do I still have a job? What are you changing here? And leaders, while leadership is usually on board, I do want to make the note that often leaders are on board in terms of, we're going to cut the check. But when you say, hey, I need you to come in and do this or this or this, often they're like, okay, wait a minute, we're not going to be taking that much time, right? So it's good to understand, how much support you have from your senior leaders. What involvement are they willing to have? Sometimes they're willing to just come to PI planning and, maybe speak or, talk to a team, which is fine. But make sure you get a good gauge of how much support you really have with those senior leaders, because that can kind of make what you're doing, but it can also break what you're doing. If people go, well, I talked to senior leader X and they're not really, especially in Asia. In America, you can kind of get away with being a little more, oh, we're working independently, we're grassroots, teams doing its But in Asia, I've experienced this over and over. We're doing a transformation, might be Scaled Agile, maybe something else. And if people go, what, leader X, they didn't, come in and say that, I want you to do this, they're not going to do it. It doesn't matter how much they paid for it, they've got the class. If they don't have that leadership support very front and center, it will really either make or break what you're doing. So make sure that you know that your leaders are engaged and that people who are involved with your release train or your Scaled Agile implementation also know whether your leaders are, they're supporting it, they're on board.
All right. Thanks, John.
I
have a question from Kenneth Chan. He says, can Scaled Agile be applied to areas and/or industries beyond IT and development? Would you be able to share an experience? Of course. I know the name Scaled Agile suggests that it is only related to Agile, right? Think of it this way, guys. Scaled Agile is founded, its constructs are based off of Lean and Agile as well. So because it's a combination of Lean and Agile, of course, supported by the DevOps best practices for continuous delivery, it can be applied to any organization. It's a matter of taking that, approaching it with an open mindset. What I mean by that is, don't have the fear that, oh, I heard somewhere that Scaled Agile is only for software and I cannot apply for manufacturing. No, I'm the living, breathing example. We applied in manufacturing, space, finance sector, medical device, you name it. There are so many organizations and industries where Scaled Agile is. In fact, without further ado, you should actually go to Scaled Agile website, look at their case studies. There are so many case studies from different organizations, backed by different industries, that you will see how they're applying it. It's pretty easy, Ken. The concepts are pretty simple. The constructs are simple. The processes that are defined are relatively simple. There is nothing complicated with Scaled Agile anyway. It's a matter of rhythm. That's it. So yes, I work with a bunch of companies in different industries. I'm sure Ashwinee did too. We are not just into software alone. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Ramesh. And another question related to what I have is because the lean component in Scaled Agile is somewhat different from the actual lean methodology. So how would you rectify or reconcile this when we implement Scaled Agile, let's say, in a non-IT environment? There would be conflict, right? Those people who are training lean will actually point finger at the SPC and say, hey, guys, your lean is not the lean we know. So how would you reconcile this situation?
Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to Scaled Agile, they actually when you come to Scaled Agile, they actually derived the aspects of lean. It is not quote unquote a copy of lean. Okay, first thing, use that and say, okay, based on lean methods, the best practices dictate that we need to focus on reducing the delay, reducing the wastage. Pretty much that's where you stop it. Don't get into this whole concept of applying the Toyota production system. That's not the intent. Whatever the learnings are that we have had from the past, take it and use it, right? Now, again, the question that you probed saying, hey, if the teams are asking that lean is not my lean, perhaps go back and see, were they educated well in the language of SAFe? Did they understand Scaled Agile Framework properly? Maybe there is a problem there. They might have gone to Google, read 1-2 articles here and there. Unfortunately, information overload and overdose is pretty high right now in the world. They did that, they come back and try to just, no. Have them attend a proper course, perhaps reach out to John, Ashwinee, myself, whoever it is, saying, hey, this is the true essence of Scaled Agile Framework. Once they understand, if they have a contextual question, we will be able to help you guys. No worries at all. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you very much, Ramesh. Thank you for the explanation.
Just to add, I mean, Scaled Agile has the quote from Deming. The disease the management has the world over is my problems are different. So he also says, yes, your problems are different, but the principles that will help you to move towards a better quality and a product is universal in nature. Have they understood those 10 principles, safe 10 principles, right? I think we have to make an attempt to make sure that, I mean, those 10 principles are inculcated very well, right? So understanding of those 10 principles, have a common, we have a common language or a common understanding about those 10 principles. That's the key for me.
And I'm going to add on to this too. One of the things that you'll see is you also have to try to convince, a lot of time going back to those leaders, they'll say, you know what, you're using Scaled Agile. This is great for our IT department. This is great for our technology people, but don't bother the rest of us with it because, you know, we're not involved, right? So sometimes you have to convince leaders and leadership or people outside of, you know, the IT or the technology kind of area, why this is relevant for them, why they're interested in your, you know, what you're working on, developing and implementing Scaled Agile. And that's generally for Agile in general, actually. Often it's the IT that kind of is the driver, and then you often run into challenges because other areas say, you know what, we're not really so keen. So that's something to be aware of, is the perception, again, once again, of leaders and other, you know, department or parts of the company that may not consider that, you know, this is a need for them to be so involved, right? So keep an eye out for that too, Kenneth.
Yeah, Nishant, did you have a question? I saw your hand raised at some point.
Yeah, Nishant, yeah.
Oh, Nishant, you're on mute in case you had a question.
While we're waiting on that, I was curious, Kenneth, if you had, you know, a lot of, how's the response been if you have brought it to people outside of technology? What kind of response have you received?
Hey, sorry, if I can jump in very quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just like connected to the previous question. So in one of the cases, Six Sigma is making its comeback, which means that the leadership, like, you know, we went through a transformation, but then the leadership changed, and the leadership comes from a Six Sigma background, Lean Six Sigma background. And of course, like, you know, because they have seen the results with Six Sigma, they are pushing for it. And of course, like, you know, when that happens, the other things go for a toss. So any like, you know, tips, pointers on how to handle that?
So okay, maybe. Sure. And this is exactly the problem I faced in one of the consulting assignment. Can things coexist, right? Can things coexist? In fact, I mean, in the company that I've worked, they were onto the manufacturing plus software. So they were already onto that lean journey. They also had their own model, like it was called as 3D or something. They already had their model. It was a fight in the sense it looked like, I mean, you software people are adding something more onto my plate, right? So where we reconciled, or I mean, where we kind of made some impact and actual adjustment is really teaching them what is safe, going through one cycle of one PI, and actually showcasing what are the commonalities that we see. Because when they have implemented some portion from the safe, it is still, I mean, they are following those principles, right? Showcase that one, and is it a possibility?
So I want to throw in a radical idea on top of what Ashwinee said, right? My biased opinion states that Six Sigma is a statistical method. What does that mean? Means you have to go through something, gather the information based on the statistic, you make a wild guess, right? Like, yes, it might reduce the delay. Simple. I'm not getting deep. I'm not a certified Six Sigma guy in that context, right? However, in the current world of uncertainty, can you afford to actually try something for 6 months to prove that it is wrong? That's where you need to decide. Simple answer. Why don't you try an iterative way of product development? Use a hypothesis-based approach, validate it and verify it, instead of going with heavy dependency on a process. Scaled Agile Framework is not just a process replica. No, it's not. There's a lot of human mindset changes that are involved there. So that is why it is actually becoming more and more prominent when compared to any other methods out there, right? Because it helps you to handle the uncertainty relatively easier than any other frameworks out there or any other processes and BPRs, business process improvements, etc. That's the whole core construct of Scaled Agile. And it helps you at the whole organization level, not just at the team level. So you are scaling up. I don't know if it answered your question.
I'll add on that a bit too, Ramesh, on the Lean and the Six Sigma, although obviously there are elements of Lean within Scaled Agile and Kanban, but organizationally, often you'll see like in operations departments or, other areas, front office areas, a lot of the leaders and they will actually be using Lean for kind of organizational improvement, right? And so you'll kind of see this horizontal where you have across the organization, they've been implementing kind of this Lean or Six Sigma, which, as you say, is more the statistical side, Ramesh. And then at the same time, often in technology or technology-related products, they've got kind of Scaled Agile and Agile and Agility. And one of the things, or maybe the tricks, is to be able to, show how they're complementary, because Lean Agile is really, Scaled Agile is Lean Agile, right? So, I mean, you're using those principles, and often I will show people, look, these are complementary principles that you're using here, right? So it doesn't have to be either or. You could actually, show people, look, there's the ability for us to complement what you've been doing, what you've been learning in your other areas, and let's use this, with what we're doing in our Scaled Agile transformation.
This is Vijay. Just to add one point to that, in the organization, okay, what happens is Lean implementation is one of the implementation. DevOps implementation is another implementation. It is not like happens silo. It happens parallelly based on top management, or if we have head office in Europe and then you have offices in India, Singapore, and any other location. So all these transformation parallelly happens. So, and each and every department also, even business unit will go with different frameworks. So practically looking at it is a bit complex. In the same time, there will be DevOps implementation going on. Parallelly, Lean will be implemented in waves, and it all mix up, meaning, so in practical situation, every transformation happen based on the management vision.
So,
and on top of the Six Sigma point of view, as Ramesh mentioned, I worked in GE where we implemented Six Sigma and transformation happened. I worked in a French bank where Lean was implemented in waves 6-7 years back. And now the business heads are looking at Agile, Scrum, scaling frameworks and things like that. So, and DevOps also parallelly it is implemented. So in banks, usually we release once a year, and then we move to twice a year. And then now, then we move to iterative development. Then later, now we are able to achieve at least once a month, we are able to release features to the customer. So it's all because of DevOps, it's all because of open banking. It's all because of the disruptive technology evolving parallelly to overall the business domains. Yeah.
Somebody else, Ramesh, or somebody else saying something?
No, I was waiting for Vijay to finish because I'm always a great proponent, if that is the right word, guys, is you mentioned something very interesting, Vijay, like in a multinational organization, transformation happens separately across the board, right? Every facility or every department kind of does it based on the budgets, etc. That is where perhaps we need to again dig deeper to see was there a group of transformation agents that are working together across the board, or is it like Wild Wild West, where every department or every facility in every organization is doing it on their own? If the latter, when you go through it, is when what you mentioned is what I have observed. The final output, it comes to be like, hey, you know, Singapore office is doing one way, India office is doing different way, you know, US office is different way. Perhaps what is lacking is that unified lace, unified center of excellence, which actually takes that head-on initiative to make sure that the process is consistent. Because at the end of the day, it is one organization, unless you have like Johnson & Johnson company, where it's a conglomeration of 177 small companies. For them, it doesn't matter. Each company can follow their own flavor as long as it works. But what is the business model? That's what is to be looked at, you know, to understand what method or framework actually is going to help. Does it make sense?
Yes, Ramesh, yeah.
Vijay, was there more to your question, more that you wanted to talk about on that? Does that kind of address it, or do you have other points you were thinking about?
John, I have few questions, or just want to get your thoughts on everybody's thought actually on the SAFe. Basically, we have multiple scaling frameworks: SAFe, LESS, Scrum at Scale, Nexus. So there is a saying that on the SAFe, it's very cost to the company, basically based on the training, because everybody needs to be in the organization, needs to be trained. So that's one point where SAFe, like comparatively, organization needs to spend more money. That's one point. I want to get your feedbacks, everybody's. Second point is SAFe is more prescribed, meaning everybody needs to follow what is prescribed in SAFe. So when compared to other frameworks, something like Scrum and Kanban, the Kanban has more flexibility than Scrum. So something like that. So in this perspective, can you please share your views actually? I have a few more questions I will ask later. Yeah.
Okay, let me hand it to our SPCTs. Go ahead.
Can I take that question? So the first question, training. I think Richard Brosnan told us one. If a CEO says, if I train people and they leave, what happens? And the CTO says, if I don't train people and they stay back, what happens, right? How are you making sure that the people are working on something which they are not trained? As simple as that. The cost factor is a secondary question for me. When you have your own internal change agents, you can train your own people. SAFe does allow. SAFe doesn't say that you have to get only an external consultant and train them on XYZ, right? So the cost factor is, I think it should be, I mean, if you think about the licensing and the actual training cost, it's actually peanuts. If you think about it, it's not even, doesn't come to like 1 month's ration, so to say, right? So I would take it up from that perspective. And the prescription point of view, I can even say Scrum is prescriptive. Scrum says you do a daily stand-up. Why should I do a daily stand-up every day, right? So it's about the discipline, isn't it? Why should I do it every day? I mean, why should I do it at 9 o'clock every day? Why not 10:30 one day, and why not 11:30 one day when I'm late to the office, right? So it's about the habit and the discipline for me. And trust me, I mean, while SAFe has a lot of guidelines on that one, as we started this discussion, Essential SAFe is the bare minimum configuration, which has those 10 critical success factors. Apart from that, lean portfolio management, are we going to apply that one in every organization? Maybe no. Are we going to start somewhere and then move forward from there? Definitely yes. So large solution, are we going to apply everywhere? I think around 5% of the companies in this world have applied large solution. So that way, I mean, one particular pain itself, nobody is actually looking at it. Okay, 95% of the organizations are not looking at it, isn't it?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, again, for the argument's sake, I can also say Scrum is very prescriptive. It tells me to run every 2 weeks, do a demo to stakeholders every 2 weeks on the dot, do a retrospective even when I am tired, so on and so forth, right?
Ramesh, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I think I'll
I
steal.
want to, yeah, no, Ashwini covered very well, but one small thing is, where is the notion coming from that safe is prescriptive? Because I've heard it before and I always ask the same question. Where did you read ever safe tell you? The name itself suggests it's a framework. By definition, it is not a method. Method means a scientific method. You do XYZ, you can expect ABC, right? Method, Scrum, Kanban, method. Safe is a scaled up framework, not even at the team level. Team level, they are saying do whatever methods you want. But for the organization to scale up is this framework, set of guidelines, set of rules, set of responsibilities. Maybe trainers or coaches like me and Ashwini, we might actually emphasize more because we don't want to deal with the headache later on. Saying you must do this way, guys. The cadence and synchronization is critical. But if you don't want to do cadence, it's okay. Don't do it. You will realize it in 2 months that not doing it is going to hurt you in the long run. Simple as that. It's a collection of the good, the bad, the ugly, right? So I would, if somebody is approaching you like safe is prescriptive, just ask them in a novice way, like, can you show me where they say you is prescriptive, meaning what does that mean? You know, that's where I would go. One of the, I know the framework looks little overwhelming when you see the big picture on the website, but safe is actually one of the easiest and in terms of implementation, as well as in terms of understanding in my biased view, because I got to safe about 13, 12, 10 years ago when they were using Visio charts. It's not even a Scaled Agile Framework officially when they were doing in Visio files. Ever since that time, man, I never even looked at anything else. I mean, that speaks to itself in my opinion, in my lifestyle, you know, that's what I will go with.
And so I'm going to add on to that, Vijay. You're going to get a lot of people who, and I know as SPCTs, you guys are like, you know, definitely thumbs up. You're going to get a lot of people who are going to challenge you and say, you know, why would I use Safe? Because there's Spotify, which is not really a Agile enterprise scaling method, by the way. But anyway, we're using Spotify, we're using this, we're using Scrum at Scale, we're using Nexus, we're using all these other methods, right? I've seen organizations that started with Safe here in Singapore, and then they went to some custom approach, they did something else. So you have to be able to address those concerns, I guess I'll call it, right? Because a lot of people go, well, we're not buying it. We're not, you know, we don't believe that. I'm sure you may have addressed that. So my personal story, I've been in Agile space about 13 plus years, about 8 of those using Safe. So I really have used Safe because for most organizations that are of large size, I find it, if you know what Shuhari, I don't know if everybody knows that, Shuhari, it comes from basically Japanese Aikido, the idea that you start to learn a rule and then you start to adapt the rule to your own context more. And then you start to learn from your own practice and you break the rule and you start to learn from your own, basically, and create your own, right? So it's like Bruce Lee. He started learning martial arts and then he adapted it and then he became basically a master where he no longer learned from anybody, but basically created his own, right? And in practice. And I view Safe as a very good shoe for most organizations and even Ha as you start to develop. But if I go to an organization and 5 or 7 years later, I come back, they've made no adaptation, no adjustment, they're just following everything by the book, I would have to ask, what's wrong, right? Because it should be growing, it should be adapting, it should be kind of like a living thing in their organization that actually over time starts to adapt. And I mean, so there's like, I think M. Campbell Petty, who's in Australia, I think when she first did some of her first ones, they didn't use like PI, this is some years ago, they used PI planning. There were things they used and didn't use and they adapted over time, right? So you need to be able to really have that conversation with people, right? It's not just like, hey, Safe, yeah, just do it. Yes, it absolutely is the leading framework. I agree with it because I've seen so many companies and you know what, you could either learn, Safe has it, in my opinion, you know, 80% of everything you need is already kind of been sorted through in Safe. And then you can adapt as you go. So it's Shuhari, right? But what you don't want to do is assume, my opinion, that, you know, everybody's just going to go, oh yeah, Safe, we're good. You just use Safe, because they may not agree with you, right? They got somebody else who said, hey, you need Nexus. Hey, you need Spotify. Forget this whole thing. Just, you know, we got a lean, you know, process. Let's do that, right? So make sure that you're able to have those conversations with people and tell them why this is a good approach versus just being like, hey, well, it's Safe, right? Because they might be like, Okay, well, what does that mean?
Thank you. Thank you for the answers, Ashwinee, Ramesh, and John. Yeah.
Vijay.
If you don't stop us, we will give you a 4-day class on it, man.
Okay, can we start the SPC class here itself?
We do have an SPC class coming up next month, so maybe Deepa, you can include that information in the chat.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining, Saul. Other questions, other discussion points? I like to look at, maybe, I don't know if you guys can talk about, I mentioned Spotify, and it's really not designed to be an enterprise scaling framework, but a lot of companies to this day, as far as I know, are still treating it as basically their approach to scaling Agile and business agility. To our SPCTs, what comment do you have if you come into contact with organizations? Because kind of, you know, I've worked with large consultancies, and often they either say, oh, it's either safe, or you see organizations that are trying to use Spotify as their approach for enterprise agility. So what do you say to these organizations? What do you say to people who are doing that?
You put me in a spot, John. All right. So again,
not easy questions, guys. Not all easy questions.
I can start with I can start with a quote from Henrik Nieberg, who wrote that beautiful picture of Spotify. He says Spotify is a company. It is not a framework. As simple as that. And Spotify no more uses Spotify. As simple as that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Again, specifically for
Spotify model, correct?
Spotify is not a model, it's a company. Simple.
Yeah. Spotify is a music company. There is no model officially registered in the universe of agility called Spotify.
No, basically, they followed a method, and then they showcased in one of the forum, and everybody, they said, if possible, you can use it, you will get the benefit. We got the benefit, but we don't guarantee that you will also get the benefit. That's what I understood.
Yeah.
No, actually, there is another article that came on LinkedIn. What is that, Ashwinee? About 4 months, 5 months ago, where they officially said they actually created the model but never used it, never saw the results out of it.
Yeah.
So
no, but after that, it was taken in one of the bank, and they failed, and then again taken by the same bank, and they succeed, and they customized, and other banks are following it.
But if you look at it,
go ahead, Nidhi. Were you going to say something?
If you look at it, there's very little information available about Spotify. All you can see about Spotify is roles and responsibilities. So primarily, team structure and roles and responsibilities, and that too not very detailed. So Ramesh, to your point, I've seen that article also where they mentioned, this is just what we used, and whatever they had published is long, long ago. It's not been updated. While if I compare it to SAFe, so I'm not saying it on behalf of SAFe as such, because, I also sometimes help my clients restructure in a different way. But if you look at SAFe, there have been so many revisions. Sometimes as an SPC, I find it hard to keep up with all those revisions, because when we implement customers, they provide feedback that is incorporated. So that revision is there, and the model framework keeps on updating. The model keeps on updating. While with Spotify, that hasn't happened. So
I have a viewpoint on that Spotify as well. There is a second which Henry wrote about the engineering culture, right? Which has all the nice practices. Nobody looks at that picture because it's very hard. It's very hard to implement, right? So tribe and clan and whatever it is, it's very easy to implement. People go for that one. It's nice. It's nice. It's not that, it's bad or anything, but the engineering practice side of Spotify model, so to say, nobody looks at that picture because it's very hard to implement, right? So that's where the buck stops for me, right? And also, if you look at the other frameworks, I'm a fan of all frameworks. No hard feeling or nothing like, okay, they are bad. But at the same time, what SAFe does better for me is giving those guidelines for the portfolio management. How do we actually connect the initiative or a thought that we have to actual execution and getting a value out of it, right? So that end-to-end viewpoint is missing in most of the frameworks for me.
I'm going to build on that. On Spotify, and so I've worked for a large consultancy for probably, what are the big 6, big 4, whatever they are, for about 10 years of my life. I'm sure people can figure out who it is if they look at my LinkedIn. But anyway, and I can tell you that in the time that we've been looking at Agile, especially in the region here, usually if you talk, I'm not talking about technology people, but I'm talking about the executives of companies, and you say, hey, what are you doing for Agile transformation? Like 50% of them are like, oh, we'll go with the Scaled Agile approach, right? And 50% will go, oh, we're using Spotify. Now that might make us really ruffle our feathers because they're like, we know that's not an Agile, that's not a full Agile approach. It's not right, because you're right, it's not. But that's what the executives are saying, right? Which obviously has some weight because they're the executives and they write the checks. So the executives, basically it comes like 50-50. It's either they're saying Scaled Agile, they're saying Spotify. So I spoke some years ago in Bangkok, back when we were doing that, at a conference with Nyberg, right? The guy from Spotify. He actually started getting into SAFe, which I think what you guys mentioned. And they said, they had been using it, their own approach, but then as it got bigger, they started to evolve, and he started getting more interested in Scaled Agile framework because, you needed something to be able to scale larger, right? So Scaled Agile really is an approach that, even he was looking at, Nyberg, who created the white paper about what they were doing at Spotify, but that doesn't change. And ING Netherlands, by the way, we should mention, they're the most famous for doing like an enterprise business agility transformation using that Spotify approach, right? So they did that, they customized it. I spoke to some of the coaches some years ago that have been involved in that. And that's one of the most famously quoted by McKinsey and all these big firms. So what you're going to get is executives are going to tell you know what, this is, we're using Spotify, and that sounds good to them because business agility transformation, ING Netherlands, McKinsey says, this is something you can do. So even though it might like drive us batty that you're like, hey, well, maybe it doesn't have everything in there you really need, right? Executives are going to say, well, I saw it at the conference. I talked to some other C-suite, they like that Spotify, right? So I think that's a conversation that comes up a lot. So being able to really address, okay, well, Scaled Agile has a lot of the things that are really going to help you to implement. Spotify, like somebody just mentioned, that really is more, it was designed for that company. You can take it or leave it, but, nobody's going to help you along per se, to really, consultancies will obviously take your money to do that, but there's not really any, serious implementation approach associated with it, right? It's just take the model or leave it. Where Scaled Agile has a full.
It is just a construct. It is just a construct of, hey, form so-and-so squad, so-and-so tribe, so-and-so this. It's a simple grouping mechanism, nothing more, nothing less. And like Ashwinee mentioned, I would rather go with something that has a proven track record of A to Z that shows you how the destination looks like, not like you start and have nowhere to go. What is the supporting structure you have later on? That's the way to think about also. Super. Wow. What time does it end?
We have about, I'd say about 20 more minutes or so and then we'll start to close it out for the day. So hopefully you guys still got a little energy to go for another round. He's like, the Spotify's really getting tired. But this is a conversation, people, I bring that up because as you go to transformation, this is almost guaranteed to come up. Someone is going to mention one of these approaches and you have to be able to tell them, well, this is the pros and the cons. Here's why it's a good idea to go with your Scaled Agile transformation. You're getting more, in terms of how you're implementing, even though you're spending the money. I think somebody asked about, well, you're spending money, because you actually have implementation guidance and certifications and you can help people to do that. You're not going to do that necessarily. Let's say you're using Spotify, you just kind of, okay, we're going to come up with our own, right? So it's important to be able to have these discussions, I think, because they are going to come up in companies that you work with or your own company. Okay, let me pass it on. Are there other questions or conversation or points you guys wanted to discuss or ask our SPCTs?
Okay, one question on the agile transformation. If the customer, big organization, come and approaching you, okay, so you need to suggest a scaling framework based on their size and their current nature. In this situation, you will suggest SAFe. In which situation you suggest other scaling framework?
Other scaling frameworks, I don't have too much of a viewpoint because I have not worked on too many, right? In fact, in one of the situations, somebody was actually looking for less. What I did was I got a consultant, who's good at less. So we both put our viewpoints, and then like Dean says, people who have got the education, let them decide what is the best for them, right? So that's how I would go for, right, to start with. But at the same time, I would rather showcase what are the benefits using SAFe, what are the things that we could do, what are the things we could not do, immediately, because many a times it's also about somebody is expecting something great to happen on next day, which none of the frameworks can guarantee, right? So because the work has to be done by you, or the organization, not by the framework. Framework will not work for you. You have to work, right?
Yes, true.
Yeah.
I agree again. You can take horse to a lake. You can give it all the different juices, sauces available out there, but it's up to the horse to choose what they want, whether they want to run or eat and sleep. So it's very hard to go either way. That is where I always request a 1-2 hours face-to-face meeting with the so-called executive leadership and put it out there. Hey, SAFe is XYZ, less is so-and-so. You choose what is good for your enterprise, because it's not me as a consultant. I'm not a used car salesman to say I get 5% commission here, 10% commission there. No, that's not the intent. No, it doesn't work like that. It's the organization's leadership need to decide what is the best one.
Okay, thanks, Ramesh.
Elizabeth has a question in the chat. What pain points would you say that the target audience faces that Scaled Agile solves for them?
Pain points Scaled Agile solves. You name it, we solve it. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Again,
it
if you look at
transparency, definitely transparency, top down, bottom up. It improves visibility. It highlights the good, the bad, and the ugly, guys. That is where you need to have appetite for it. Scaled Agile highlights all the gaps in one go through a fire hydrant. So if you cannot handle it, that's where people drop the implementation of SAFe. One chronic reason why people say SAFe is bad, because they do not have the appetite to handle the reality. Because it's at the end of the day, heart of the hearts, it's agile at everywhere. Agile means what? You are basically bringing visibility to everything you do. So that's where the problem is. All the delays, all the decision issues, all the rampant waste of money being spent on useless, non-prioritized work, all this come up. In addition to the good stuff that comes up, but good people tend to forget, right? We love to connect with the negative stuff all the time in life. Human beings are like that. We love to harp on it. So that is where we need to balance it out, right? It highlights everything that is not working in your organization. So be ready for it.
In fact, one of the implementation that I have been part of, the leader, actually, she put up her, she was the center head for India. She put up her daily stand-up board in the open. Anybody can come and see it, right? So are your leaders that much open? And again, SAFe makes them, SAFe and they have to be that much authentic. In fact, it had some cards around employee compensation. The whole organization knows that compensation discussions are going on, right? So can you be this transparent? Like Ramesh said, if you can't handle that kind of a pressure of being transparent on everything, it's very easy to say framework doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah. Blame it on the consultant. Hey, Ramesh is bad, Ashwinee is bad. They don't know how to guide. Our people are awesome. Framework sucks. Let's go with some model that is like mediocre in nature. That just we are doing it, but you never reach the destination. No, all kidding aside, it helps with a lot of stuff.
And also specific framework, the slide calls about engagement, time to market, your quality, right?
I think another thing, if you ask kind of the pain point, from seeing so many companies at this point, a lot of companies, especially now, kind of COVID, post-COVID, you know, they're trying to figure out, how do I operate, you know, digital? How do I operate very adaptive and quick? And how do I, you know, adjust to all the changes that are going on? You know, how do I act like a startup, like a small company, basically, even though I'm a huge company? And Scaled Agile helps them to do that, because you can now use this, as we call it, dual operating system, right? This idea that you can now be very adaptive using Scaled Agile, even though you're a very big company. And that's something that's like a lifeline for a very big company. Is very slow, because the last thing that you can afford to do now, especially post-COVID, is be really slow in your decision making, slow in developing new products, slow in adapting. And Scaled Agile really does help them to be able to operate more like a startup, at least in some of the value streams that they're working on.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Okay, other questions or comments or thoughts for our SPCTs? Need to drop off. All right, thanks, Nidhi.
Yes, thank you very much. It was lovely to be here, and thanks for the insights and useful tips, and hope to see you all again. Thanks for joining.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all for your inputs. Yeah, it's a very good discussion.
Thanks, Vijay. I mean, this
Thank
is what
you.
is important, and more than what do you say, monologue. We are talking something, right? So it's better always to discuss and fight over a few things as well, if I can call it that way.
No, basically in LinkedIn, somebody create a comic agile and saying that, yeah, they're trying to project in that way. Some people are trying to say, we don't need any scaling framework. We'll go back to agile and scrum. So that is going on. Agile 2 is coming up. So these are all the challenges are there, but still SAFe is leading in scaling agile frameworks. That's good. Yeah.
Because
maybe the awareness needs to be improved. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Ashwinee.
Trust me, the executives in the organization know that, I mean, we are working in a complex world, and I mean, it will need something not very simple, right? So again, Scrum is nice at a team level, but what do we do over and above that one? Scrum of Scrum, Scaled Agile, Nexus, whatever you call it. I mean, it tries to address some portion of it, right? So we try to address some portion of it. And luckily, me and Ramesh have gotten onto this Scaled Agile journey very early in the days. And we have seen the pitfalls, we have seen the successes, and we can vouch for that one. I mean, what makes a successful patterns, right? I mean, we can actually vouch for that one. That's where we come from. At the same time, our viewpoint also is, and Scaled Agile's viewpoint also is not to put down any framework. No, right? Because each one has their own merit. But at the same time, what we talk is, this is what we are good at, and this is what we know can work, right? So. And even in our consulting assignments, and again, Ramesh also can vouch for that, when we don't say, okay, I'll be here for 2 years. I want to be in an organization for as much less time as possible, trying to teach the people, teach the teachers, and they should take it forward. End of the day, it's the company's vision, mission, and the roadmap. They have to take it forward. Consultants will not take it forward, right? Unless you are an employee. I mean, even employees won't take the company vision forward, right? So they will also leave at certain point. Again, that's a hard reality, right?
Yeah.
You guys can see on the screen, there is a class coming up that Ashwinee is teaching. I'll be co-training with him. We'll send this information out to the whole meetup group so everybody has it. But that's on the screen there. So if you enjoyed the session, we'll go for a few more questions as well. You can join, the information's there. It's in the chat. You can also ask Elizabeth on my team. She can tell you about the class and help you to get registered for that, or if you want to share it with other people. And I think there's a promo code there as well that's included, that I think includes a discount for the class as well. So that's on screen. Let me go through, see if there's any more questions, anything else people wanted to ask or talk about. What about DevOps? We haven't really talked about DevOps. DevOps including in Scaled Agile, DevOps instead of Scaled Agile. What are you guys' thoughts about DevOps?
I heard that SAFe is going to come up with SAFe, its own framework for DevOps, rather than, meaning the CI/CD will be replaced with SAFe prescribed framework or formula than removing the DevOps part. Is that true or?
No, I don't know of anything of that sort. Only thing is DevOps article has been updated with DevSecOps. The new thoughts in the industry has been really added there. And also, luckily, I mean, we take a complete viewpoint of exploration to deployment or delivery, right? Not just the CI/CD part. And in fact, I mean, even if we read any of the original DevOps intention, it was an end-to-end viewpoint rather than just a technology viewpoint. I think Gene Kim also talked about it in the summit, saying that it's more about culture than anything else, right? Again, tools, technologies, and practices will come, definitely. They will help you to be faster, but yeah.
I don't think I've heard anything about there being a safe only DevOps approach either. Unless I missed something, I haven't heard it either.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay,
Kenneth.
fine.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, closing thoughts as we round out here? Maybe I'll let you guys give a closing thought and we'll wrap up the session.
Maybe John, Ashwinee, and Ramesh, we are hearing about Agile too. Have you heard about anything and what will be the change?
Again, can I give my perspective? I mean, I keep telling this one, my biased opinion, keep telling this one in all the classes. Think about maybe 15 years back when we had training courses for Excel sheet and Microsoft Office, right? So we had to go learn somewhere, right? Now our kids do it a lot better. My son uses Excel sheet and PPT is a lot better than me, right? So it is, I mean, they're born with that one. And Agile and DevOps luckily has been the curriculum in many of the colleges now, right? So wherever they teach software engineering, Agile and DevOps is a curriculum. So the kids who join the organizations already have a viewpoint, good or bad, right? So they would have mostly done their project work also through an Agile way, right? So what I see is Agile becomes mainstream. You might not find actually trainings for Agile like when we do now, but maybe next step, right? So the implementation, the value, or I mean, mostly conversations around it, I mean, more than the trainings, right? So I would say that one.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
I don't want to teach the same thing for the next 20 years. I mean, I don't want to do that one. We want to evolve somewhere.
I was going to add on that in terms of schools and curriculum, at least in Singapore in this region, I didn't used to see Agile at all 7-8 years ago. Now I'm starting to see more people know it or have heard of it, and it's being incorporated. It sounds like in the schools and a little more in universities. So I think that is something that's starting to be, involved a lot more for people who are, kind of from the formal education approach, and they're starting to hear of it and, as an approach for companies. So I think we're starting to see that a lot more now.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments or closing comments? Ashwinee, Ramesh, anything else you wanted to close with?
No. Yeah, good. You're good.
It was amazing. It was a great session. Thank you for putting it together, and looking forward to many more of those, guys. It's fantastic. Great job, everyone. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody. Deepa, thanks. I don't know if anybody else have any closing thoughts, but we will go ahead and wrap it up. I'll send out the information for the upcoming class, as well as we'll have a link. We should also for the recording, and all that information will be available for everybody on the meetup group. So we'll send that out as well. All right.
Yep.
Thanks,
yeah. Do you want to spend some time
people.
to just inform them about the upcoming class on implementing SAFe that we have?
Yes, please go ahead.
So just take a moment. Yep, we'll just take a moment to just share some details on that. We have an implementing SAFe class coming up on November 8th to 11th. It'll be hosted by Cyberban. Ashwinee would be the lead trainer, and we'd have John supporting as a co-trainer. And as a special gesture to all of you who've joined in this session, we would be, one second, I'll just share. I'm just sharing it. Yep, yep. We would be sharing a promo code with all of you to kind of, use it for the session in case you want to share it with, anyone who has not taken this.
Deepa, is that promo code? I'm going to send out the email later. Are you going to give me that code to send with the email?
I would be, yes,
okay.
I would be sharing it with you, John. Yes.
Okay, great.
All right. So thanks again to all of you for joining the session, and great having all of you. And thanks, Ramesh. Thanks, John. And thanks.
Have a great
all
rest
of you.
of the day. Thanks, Deepa. Thanks, Ashwinee. Thanks, Ramesh. And thanks everybody for joining us. It was a good discussion. We'll look forward to having more, and hopefully some of you guys can join our class as well. We'll look forward to that. Yes, go. And sorry, was something else, Deepa?
Nope, that will be all. Thanks so much.
Great. So everybody have a great evening, rest of the day, morning, Ramesh, rest of the morning for you, and have a great day, everybody. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks for arranging this. Thanks, Ashwinee and Ramesh, for sharing your views. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye. Almost 2.